Saturn is often defined by its symmetry. It's a gigantic mass of hydrogen and helium gases held together by a rapid rotation that has caused Saturn to bulge at the middle. In such an environment, atmospheric behavior becomes predictable. Winds flow in belts, and clouds form in circular patterns. However, everything about this predictable, symmetrical environment changes in one particular place. Right at the North Pole of Saturn, the typical ring pattern suddenly ends. In its place lies an enormous hexagonal shape called the Hexagon. It is not a passing cloud phenomenon or optical illusion, but an actual atmospheric phenomenon measuring almost 30,000 kilometers in size. In simpler terms, two Earths can fit comfortably within its borders. While most storms in our solar system, such as the Great Red Spot of Jupiter, can be described as a hurricane that revolves in a curved manner because of the Coriolis effect, the jet stream on Saturn follows a straight path for about several thousand kilometers before making a sharp turn of 120 degrees, repeating this process 6 times to complete a perfect geometric circuit around the pole. On a planet comprised entirely of gases, where no mountains or land exist that can channel the winds, a storm that is geometrically shaped should not even be physically possible. At the center of this shape lies a polar vortex, which is essentially a perpetual hurricane with an eye that is 50 times larger than anything on Earth. Now, the most unsettling part of this geometric anomaly is how long it has been sitting there. In 1981, when the Voyager 1 spacecraft performed its flyby of Saturn and the first high-resolution images of the North Pole reached Earth, scientists were certain they were looking at a glitch. Back then, it was thought to be a fluid dynamics accident that could not last for more than a few months. However, by the time that the Cassini probe reached Saturn in 2004, it had become apparent that almost 25 years on from its discovery, there had been no change at all. This longevity is mathematically overwhelming. In the time between the Voyager and Cassini missions, Saturn had gone through a large seasonal shift. The planet takes 29 Earth years to orbit the Sun, meaning the North Pole spent decades in total darkness and extreme cold, followed by years of direct solar exposure. We watched as the hexagon changed color, shifting from a hazy blue to a deep golden yellow as sunlight reacted with the atmospheric aerosols. Yet despite the massive changes in temperature and light, the 6 sharp corners remained perfectly intact. While every other cloud formation on Saturn shifted and dissolved, the hexagon stayed locked in place, proving that whatever is driving this shape is buried far deeper than just the surface clouds. In order to comprehend why the winds remain unwilling to bend, we must explore the underlying forces that essentially confine the atmosphere into a strict geometrical boundary. Based on gravity measurements, the hexagon appears to be more than just a hat resting on top of the pole. It may turn out to be the head of an enormous hexagonal column composed of air that stretches for several hundred kilometers below into the depths of the planet. However, if it's not the actual structure that acts like a tower, it must be the mathematics that does it. The theory suggests that the northern jet stream acts like a standing wave. It's like plucking a string on a guitar. When it vibrates at the correct frequency, it looks stationary. And this is not a theory either. In laboratory tests, they had a water-filled spherical tank which was mounted on a spinning turntable. And scientists noticed that when the center of the rotation spun faster than the outer parts, there was an instantaneous creation of geometric shapes in the boundary region between the two areas. Based on their observations, scientists were able to make triangles, squares, and hexagons. However, while a laboratory water-filled tank has solid walls keeping everything in place, there is no such thing with Saturn, a massive floating sphere in space. This poses a mystery on how a planetary body maintains itself in such precise geometry, especially on a scale as big as a hemisphere. It is even more baffling to note that it is not a case that affects the entire globe. In the north, everything is held within the inflexible, 6-sided enclosure, while at the South Pole, the system works in precisely the way that was predicted by scientific studies. This results in a massive planetary paradox. Either the fast spin or composition of Saturn would give rise to the hexagon formation in both poles. However, what we see is that there exists 2 planets with 2 different laws operating on them. one which operates under the laws of circular flow dynamics, and the other being bound in an inflexible geometric pattern. This raises the unnerving question: what exactly is Saturn? Gas giants should be a dynamic, shape-shifting sphere of air without any form of solid ground beneath their feet. However, the science in this case seems to work with a degree of firmness that should not be possible for anything constructed purely from gas. This is something more comparable to a machine than planet. So, what's actually inside it? Based on gravitational readings, it's not just some surface cloud, but the top of an immense air column extending thousands of kilometers into space. With the amount of pressure in place, at such heights, hydrogen stops being gaseous and becomes liquid metallic, like on Jupiter. The interior of the planet is likely so dense and stratified that it acts as a physical anchor. The rings might be the most famous part of this planet, but the real mystery is the crushing, metallic core that is essentially forcing the entire planet to obey a mathematical blueprint we still don't understand. There is a massive gap between what we know and what is actually happening right now. Because Saturn takes nearly 30 Earth years to orbit the Sun, we have only ever witnessed a fraction of its seasonal cycle. Our most detailed understanding of the planet comes from Cassini, which spent 13 years orbiting it. It gave us our first high-resolution look at the shifting colors of the North Pole and the internal gravity measurements that suggest a hard interior. But that mission ended in September 2017 when the spacecraft was intentionally crashed into Saturn's atmosphere. Since then, we have had 0 dedicated spacecraft at the planet. While the James Webb Telescope can catch infrared glimpses from millions of miles away, the North Pole is currently tilting into a 15-year winter, hiding it in total shadow. For all we know, the geometric structures we've been studying could have shifted or changed entirely in the 9 years since we left. We won't get a definitive answer until the 2030s. NASA is currently assembling the Dragonfly mission, designed to fly through the atmosphere of Saturn's moon, Titan. Even then, Dragonfly is a lander focused on a moon, not an orbiter designed to monitor the planet's weather. Until a new mission is greenlit to return to the atmosphere itself, we have to rely on historical snapshots to explain a world that is likely changing without us.